Hello fellow bibliophiles and welcome back to Blatantly Bookish. I'm Marissa and today I am finally kicking off my adaptation series with Anne with an E. Yes, I finally decided which one I wanted to film first. And for those of you who may be new to the channel and have no idea what I'm talking about, you can quickly take a look at my adaptation announcement video, which I'll link up here or down below, which sums it up way better than I can this second. So Anne with an E takes a childhood classic, that would be Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery, which already has countless TV adaptations, including the much-beloved 1985 version with Megan Follows as Anne, and once again readapts the book to TV. Now, you have to ask, when one book already has a slew of TV adaptations, what is the point of adapting it again? What makes this version different, and why bother creating it at all? This adaptation is very smart in that it is different enough to stand out from the other TV adaptations. And the one way, for me, in which this adaptation is the most different from other adaptations and the book hinges on the main character. The Anne Shirley Cuthbert in this adaptation is less innocent than anticipated, more fragile, and pretty troubled. Don't get me wrong, she still retains the imaginative, chatty version of Anne that I envisioned while reading the book to an extent. Her casting is perfect, though. She appears younger than Anne is in the 1985 adaptation, and much more like the character I saw in my own head while reading the book. Long red hair, freckles, thin, her teeth are all crooked, which indicate that she's too young to have had braces yet in our society, and it makes her fit in with the time period in which the book takes place, because a little orphan girl wouldn't have had a classic Hollywood smile back then. She also clearly hasn't gone through puberty yet. So, as I said, the casting is superb. There are times when she is so chatty that she's on the verge of annoying, which is exactly how I felt while reading the book. However, even though she's more youthful, she really isn't more innocent. They basically gave Anne PTSD from her days in the orphanage and the Hammond family, and that is definitely an interpretation of the book, rather than what I remember actually reading. I suppose you could read grim and tragic undertones into Lucy Maud Montgomery's Anne, but for me, her Anne turned to imagination out of loneliness, not as a coping mechanism to deal with abuse and other horrific experiences that no child should ever have to face. The TV adaptation Anne is so believable, though, that I wonder, is she more realistic in a way than Lucy Maud Montgomery's Anne? Was the original author of Anne of Green Gables smoothing over what orphan life would really have been like in the 1890s? The adaptation changes other characters as well. Not as much with Marilla and Matthew, though. I would argue that the strongest aspect of this adaptation, besides the simple and beautiful cinematography, is actually Anne's relationship with Matthew and Marilla. I think those stayed truest to the book, but really came to life on screen. I think the medium of TV better conveyed how old and lonely Matthew and Marilla were, and how Anne truly warmed their hearts and wormed her way into their lives. Though the creators of this show did add in an additional subplot to emphasize this, hint hint, wink wink, episode 2 if you've seen it, that I didn't think was necessary. They also added in a French stable boy, which to me emphasized two things about the relationship between Anne and her newfound guardians. One, that she was incredibly lucky to be taken in by a family like Marilla and Matthew, because childhood wasn't always easy back then. And two, that she was really someone special to them, because they didn't welcome this boy into their lives the same way that they welcomed Anne Shirley. Though I didn't enjoy how this adaptation portrayed Gilbert Blythe and his relationship with Anne. I didn't find him as bold as in the book, nor as charming and dashing as the 1985 adaptation's Gilbert. He was shyer than I anticipated, and far more sensitive from the get-go. He isn't the same smug, self-assured character as in the book, nor did I feel the same extent of animosity and competition between Anne and Gilbert that I experienced in the book. Part of all these changes stems from the backstory that was attributed to Gilbert in this adaptation. He too has a somber past, as it seems everyone does in this adaptation. They gave Marilla and Matthew backstories to try and explain why brother and sister never married. And there's so much more intrigue to all three of these backstories, which sheds light on parenthood, womanhood, and the status of being an orphan. I know it's all a bit cryptic, but these backstories definitely add another layer to the text and subtext of Montgomery's original work. This series is such a mixed bag for me, but one aspect in which it did not let me down was the cinematography. Green Gables in Avonlea really is beautiful. I adore Anne's little playhouse, forest, cottage, dwelling out in the woods that she creates for herself, and there's just so much beauty in this show. And the intro theme is mesmerizing. It captures Anne's spirit, her playfulness, her loneliness, her relationship with nature, just really everything. It's really something spectacular, and you should all check it out. Seriously, please click on the link that I leave below with the show's intro, because it is magnificent. The line, "You are ahead by a century," is debatable, but the book has endured in our hearts for over a century, and I also think the line is referring to the updated feminist moments that appear in the series. Anne is really encouraged in her independence and scholarly pursuits in a way that is perhaps truly ahead by a century. The show has moments where she discusses the futility of marriage and claims that she could do the work any boy could do. And don't even get me started on how well they portrayed Aunt Josephine Barry in this show. The merits of this TV adaptation are how different it is from the book and previous adaptations, but I would also argue that it's maybe a little too different. The show added much more psychological intrigue and depth to the characters that we are all familiar with, but part of me wants to scream and shout how this is a children's book, and how this type of drama and psychological intrigue isn't what attracts us all to Anne's story. It's almost as if Anne herself reimagined her own story, making it a bit more theatrical, tragical, and romantical, if you will. But in true Anne fashion, I think she went a bit over the top. As much as I appreciated this adaptation, and I truly did, it has so many beautiful scenes and concepts that make me think again about my interpretation of the book. But as much as I appreciated it, I don't think I want to continue on with the second season. I don't want to pick apart Anne of Green Gables the way the show does, simultaneously celebrating what we love about and pushing back on the innocent facade of a children's novel. I'd rather retain the beloved image of Anne that's in my head, a simpler, more innocent Anne indeed. That being said, I think that this adaptation tells me a lot about myself and my own experience with adaptations. Why didn't I fall head over heels in love with this adaptation? Why was it such a mixed bag for me? Is it simply because it didn't adhere to the characters in my head and in the book? If it just followed the book word for word, would I even like it? I personally don't think so. I think that this took a piece of potential subtext or critical reading of the book and expanded that concept. And it was interesting, but not something that I wanted in addition to my reading experience. Which leads me to an important principle of adaptation. If you are going to adapt a book to TV, I think that there has to be something missing from the original, or something you want to emphasize and expand upon in a new way. To me, Anne really doesn't have that need. I didn't read this book saying, I wish I knew everyone's backstory, or I wish I knew more about what happened to Anne before she met the Cuthberts. The other two adaptations that I want to discuss in the future, though, I think do have this need, and I'll of course get into that in future videos. So, have you guys seen Anne with an E? If so, what did you think of it? Did it work for you as a TV series? Will you be continuing on with the second season? And if you haven't watched it, would you like to give it a try? I can't wait to hear all of your thoughts below, and I look forward to seeing you guys in another video soon. Bye!
First thing we climb a tree, and maybe then we talk, or sit silently and listen to our